How about we chat cheap project car ideas for 2022? Pound it! Welcome to the channel, I'm Grant Tommy. This is Straight Six Vid, your home for offbeat, hot rodding, and 5-minute Fridays are back. As you know, I mentioned I'm going to bring them back here for just the front end of 2022 in my last upload. But, one of them from last year was super successful, and so I figured I'd better double down and do this again for 2022. So today we are talking top 5 best cheap starter cars for 2022, and I'll try to keep the rules a little more brief than I did in last year's episode. I kind of rambled on, but they're pretty simple. Rear-wheel drive, V8, $3,300 total budget with my 90% rule applied. If that doesn't make sense to you, ask a question down below in the comments and I'll explain to you what I mean by my 90% rule. But it's got to be a car that's in good shape, in good solid body, just like my Fairmont was a nice clean square, not a lot of dents, not a lot of rust kind of car. Those are the main rules. Now I'm going to break, much like last year, the fifth one. I'm going to break the rules just a little bit for the last one, but let's get 5 minutes on the clock and let's get started. Number 1, we'll pick up right where we left off from our 2021 episode, and we were talking about Panther platforms as the kind of honorable mention at the very end of that episode. I'm going to take this a little bit of a step further and say, as opposed to just straight up ripping it off, we're going to call it the 5-liter generation of the Panther platform. Yeah, I'm talking about ahead of the old mod motor, kind of basically everything. I think it's probably 92 and before. And honestly, I found a ton of these in the like $1,800, $2,200 price point, and even if the bodies on these weren't immaculate like the ones I'm showing you right now, you could always do what my boy Joshua Joyce did and just completely body swap it with something so much cooler like his 49 Lincoln. It feels a little bit like I'm being lazy and I'm just ripping off something from last year's episode, but as we did with Lincoln Mark 8s last year, it's funny, the market's telling me this year it's really more of the exact same car in some sense, but the Ford Thunderbird and Mercury Cougar. So we go, that generation is going to be like 1989 to 1997, and while I don't know exactly if there are a ton of commonalities between this platform and the SN95 Mustang platform, I gotta imagine there are a lot of interchangeable parts, and so much like the premise of or the idea of a Fairmont being able to buy a bunch of used 5-liter Mustang parts, I bet you there's a bunch of SN95 parts for these cars that swap over. And you know what? You do get the 4.6-liter V8 most of the time, and at least an AOD transmission. So not a bad starter setup. We head on over to the other side of Detroit for number 3, and that's going to be 4-door G-bodies. Yes, if you guys remember, Hot Rod Garage, Tony Angelo and Lucky Costa built a 4-door Malibu, Chevy Malibu, called Grandma's Getaway Car, which was a pretty sweet ride, which featured everything from LS power to a 6-speed manual transmission. And the idea here is that, well, G-bodies, again, are a super popular ride. Really hard to find them in the 2-door outfit, but if you're okay with an extra set of doors, which seems to be, as the years go on, getting to be more and more acceptable, why I tell you that you would have a ton of fun building you a 4-door G-body. Check out this sweet early Buick. That would be a pretty sweet little sleeper. Number 4, we go with early GM model station wagons. So I'm talking Buick Roadmaster, Chevy Caprice. Again, for a while Chevy had their fleet car they sold for cop cars too, in that Caprice. I forget that 3-letter designation. I want to say it's like LQ91, so I don't know. But anyway, same idea. It's kind of like, much like the Panther platform. You get the idea. You get a fuel-injected V8 with rear-wheel drive, and as long as we're talking push-rod Chevy engines, you can get power out of them in some way, shape, or form. And even if you don't like their version of fuel injection, it's getting more and more easier to slap on a new Performer RPM intake and just slap on like a Holley Sniper EFI system to remedy that. we wrap up at number 5 with the rule breaker, the one that doesn't quite meet all criteria, and that's going to be a 92 to 97 Ford Ranger. And I'm going to specifically tell you to seek out the two-wheel drive 2.3 liter 4-cylinder version. Now, bear with me here for a second. Now, it's going to be a turd. It's going to be a slug, but the 2.3 liter Ford Lima is actually, because of its like rules and classifications for dirt track racing, it's a pretty common motor used in that circuit. And so you have companies like Cosworth and Esslinger that have performance parts for these things, and so they kind of have a cult following. Now, granted, this era of 2.3 liter is not necessarily that, so you might wind up spending, because those parts ain't cheap, you might end up spending more than you bargained for. But at the very least, if you had to do a V8 swap, you now have a vehicle that can carry home in your bed that V8. Well, that does it for this installment of 5 Minute Friday. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you understand what I mean by offbeat hot rodding. It's basically maybe not your A-list car, not even maybe your B-list car, but if you find the right C-list car, I think you can make something pretty cool about it. It's all about eliminating excuses. It's all about eliminating excuses and getting into the hot rod hobby and not having to worry about paint and body and all that stuff. So that's what I'm all about here at Straight Six Fan. I hope to give you guys at least 3 more of these 5 Minute Fridays in the next 3 weeks. So tune back in next week for the next installment of that. That's going to do it for this episode. To all my Six fans out there, thanks for watching.